This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at today is William Eubank's Underwater, which came out this year, 2020. And if you've seen the trailer for this, it wouldn't be a shock if you confuse this with Alien. It shares many elements in common, to be sure, but the thing is, beyond surface similarities, this movie is nothing like Alien. And in fact, it's a pity that the advertising campaign created that impression. The first movie I saw from William Eubank was A Signal, and that is an impressive movie for a young filmmaker. It's very controlled. It takes home UFO mythos and does some really interesting things with it. And Underwater does the same thing with the monster genre. It's a remarkably clever movie. And the thing is, at first watch, let me give you the way I tend to look at movies. A movie has to earn my attention, typically. Which is to say, if I don't think it's worth the time it takes for me to invest in it, I'll still watch it, but oftentimes I'll do other things while watching, such as work on a new post, do a new WordPress page, whatever. Something in combination with watching the movie. In other words, I'm multitasking. And anyone who multitasks likely knows that you're not dedicating your attention to any one thing. You can. But the thing is, it means that you're not doing something particularly well. There's no such thing as multitasking 4 or 5 different things and all of them work well. You're going to devote more attention to some things than others. Therefore, some things will be done better than other things. So, as I said, I was watching Underwater, and what struck me is that it's shot in a very realistic fashion. In the sense that if you're deep underwater, you can't see very well. Even with lights, it just swallows up the luminosity and you just can't see 5 feet in front of you. The movie is very realistic in this respect. But when watching it, I was thinking to myself, why is it so realistic? Because if you've seen movies like Deep Star 6, Leviathan, and The Abyss, you'll notice that no matter how deep they are in the ocean, it's still relatively bright, or I should say how deep they're supposed to be, because obviously they're not shooting in the depth of the ocean. That's just artistic license. It's the same thing like X-Wing fighters roaring through space. Sound doesn't travel in a vacuum very well. So that would be virtually soundless, which would make for a less interesting movie. So the filmmakers indulged the imagination, so to speak. The thing is, Underwater doesn't do that, making it probably the most realistic looking undersea adventure I've ever seen. And it's interesting in that respect. The monsters that are present, you don't see very well, ever. I mean in the entire movie, which leads me to believe it was also designed to be on the big screen. Of course you can watch it on a television. But what I noticed is that I first watched it on a small, relatively small computer monitor. I was missing so much of the movie, it was kind of frustrating and I didn't think much of it. So I watched it again on a larger television. And while a lot of details were still not seen, it struck me as much more interesting, visually speaking, but also really, really clever. And let me tell you what I mean. I mentioned earlier that Aliens is a very simple movie, and it is. That's not the case with Underwater. Underwater is open to interpretation, and that's what I find so fascinating about this movie. My interpretation is that it's an adventure with monsters underwater, but it's also a political movie. It's very political to me, and you can see glimpses of it in the way characters act. For instance, there was the black character, who, by the way, didn't get killed first. That's not true. I read reviews that said that was the case. It's not. There are tons of other people killed prior to him. When you get to the group dynamic, he does die, but he's hardly the first person to die in the movie. In any case, you'll notice that he's putting on his helmet and he looks at it, and the camera makes an effort to catch that scene. And it's interesting because it doesn't have to. The scene itself is not a big one, but nonetheless, you see him looking at his helmet, and he later dies. Why is that? Well, there's a crack in his helmet, and a character actually says he knew it. He knew the girl. This was the girl who played in the Twilight movies. Her name is eluding me at the moment, but she was saying he knew that the helmet was broken, and he likely did. And this, again, my interpretation, but I think it's accurate. He literally sacrificed himself. The question is why? He literally sacrificed himself. And in my view of the movie, I think it was because he saw he could not contribute to the survival of the group. He had no real role to play, so he exited the game, so to speak. And this self-sacrificial nature of characters runs throughout this movie. T.J. Miller's character, and normally I'm not fond of T.J. Miller as an actor, but he was pretty good in here. Lots of gallows humor, which I appreciate. Comes off as a bit of a dick initially, but when you come to know his character, he's actually a really noble person. He just hides it behind this facade of jokes. He's afraid, but he never surrenders based on his fear. Look at the captain. He sacrifices his own life so that Twilight Girl can survive. And I'm sorry, I forgot her name. It will be in the video though, trust me. So this movie is about sacrifice, about individuals sacrificing themselves for what they perceive to be the greater good. And it's actually very anti-corporatist, which I thought was interesting for a movie coming from 20th Century Fox. This whole situation was brought to life by this Tian Corporation, T-I-A-N, which sounds vaguely Chinese, but there's no way of knowing that. It's essentially a big, faceless company that is doing something that they well know will bring about bad outcomes. How they know it? If you look at and this movie is so important for you to see every little bit. The opening credits shows you the history of that mine. And you see the things that the company has been doing. And the end credits do the exact same thing. You see the very same response for the corporation and their plans to go back to that site, which was destroyed. As I said, this movie is just so clever and so multifaceted and so many layers to it. I definitely can see myself going back to it because it's an interesting movie. And the monsters aren't the real problem in and of themselves, in the sense that they're monsters, but they're not evil. And that's also a very interesting perspective to take. The monsters are just beings that live in a particular environment. We disrupted them. We had no reason to be there. Our presence is triggering this event, not them. They're, oddly enough, the innocents. They're just defending what they know. This movie is so fascinating and so well done. It has the usual stylistic effects that Eubank particularly uses. Again, check out the signal. You'll see a lot of the same things here. Lots of slow motion shots, lots of frozen action shots. That's what I call them. You'll know what I mean when you see the movie. And it's just so clever. As I said, when I first saw this movie, I didn't expect a lot. And I didn't think I got a lot, to be totally honest. But on rewatching it and actually paying attention to all the interesting little details, you get a movie that's not only fascinating and multi-layered, but in its own way, very unique for the genre. And it's a definite win. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review.